Hello, everyone, and welcome to another VisitNC webinar. This week, we're going to talk about moving forward in a virtual world, and we're going to have several guests to talk with us. First off, we'll have Marlise Taylor from our research department talking about what's going on with traveler mindset, where people are, where we are, and what's happening in the state. And then I think we've got a really good treat for you. We've got Margo Metzger, who's working for us for PR. Many of you know her. She's got a great long history in North Carolina doing tourism promotion. Chelsey Kirby with J Public Relations, who's our public relations contractor. And Veda Gilbert from Discover Durham to talk about media missions and how you can do them in a virtual environment. So we're really excited about today. The webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on our partner site, partners.visitnc.com. We also will, you can ask questions. If you can see, there's a questions tab, so you can ask any questions if you'd like, and we'll answer the questions all at once at the end of the program to be ready to move on. So I am just going to start it off by talking a little bit about what's going on with our funding and with our grant programs. So we've been really excited about this. With our grant programs, as many of you may know, we had 104 different partners, and we did a $5 million credit program to join into our co-op marketing. Many of you engaged with that. We're really excited in how that's going to help people get their message out. The other actual grant program we had was with the NC Travel Industry Association, and it's $1.5 million worth of marketing grants. So we're in phase 2 of that. We've had 110 different applications for those grants, tourism offices from 71 different counties. So we're really excited about that. We've received about 1.9 million in requests for the grant funds, and there are 1.5 million in grants. So we will give away all those funds and try and help award people as much as possible to help them move forward with their projects to get going. I am going to have, we had talked about having a webinar. We're going to do one next week, Tuesday, so look for it in Newslink. If you have signed up for those grants and you were awarded a grant, I'm going to do a short little webinar on how to do the reporting, the C1 and C2 forms for the Pandemic Recovery Office and the Office of Management and Budget. We'll do that next week to give you guys some time to do that. Those have to be turned in by the 20th. So we'll have that coming up next week to look forward to. Now, we want to bring in Marlise Taylor. Marlise, of course, is our research director for VisitNC. She does a wonderful job for us, as always. Hello, Marlise.
Hey, Whit. Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here and excited to give you an update. It's been a couple of months since we've given a research update, so I'm going to quickly take you through several things before we move on to the PR. So here's the agenda. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at the COVID-19 sentiment that we work on with destination analysts. Then we're going to go over some of the hard numbers, some of the impact numbers so far that we have, the total spending, occupancy tax analysis, and some lodging analysis. And then I'm going to give you kind of some highlights of our most recent resident sentiment that we just got data for. So I hope y'all aren't hearing that noise. Apparently my Google line is ringing, so sorry about that. Okay, so let's just keep moving on. So COVID sentiment. So again, remember that we work with destination analysts, and we've been working with them for 30. Yes.
I'm making you the presenter now, so hopefully people will be able to see your presentation. Just wanted to make sure we've got that going.
I'm sorry, I thought it was showing it already. Let me start over. Apologize, I thought I had hit that the right way. Okay, now can you see it, Whit?
I believe so. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I apologize, everyone. So again, hopefully you heard what I said. I'm just gonna click on through. Here's our agenda. Again, the COVID-19 sentiment, some impact numbers, and then some top line resident sentiment from our wave 2 of our resident sentiment study with MMGY. So first, let's talk about the COVID-19 sentiment. Again, we work with destination analysts, and they just released their week 34 of their sentiment data as it regards to COVID-19. So amazingly, we've been doing this so long with them. So here are just some top line updates from this week. Again, these graphs represent the most recent data, which was fielded just last weekend. So you can see as we move towards winter and colder weather, expectations regarding the severity of the virus have taken sharp declines in the last couple of weeks. This week, 61% of American travelers and 57% of travelers in the South region reported that they believe the virus will get worse in the next month. Unfortunately, excitement to travel now has also shifted downward this week for both U.S. and Southern travelers. So you could see 48% are excited at any level to travel. It was 52.5 last week, so that's decreased. In fact, more than 40% of travelers, American travelers right now, say they would actually feel guilty traveling, and 50% report that travel right now would be irresponsible. And so these numbers, these feelings are somewhat reflected in this graph. More than a quarter of American travelers have no plans to travel right now. You can see the bar on the far right, while about a third say that it will be later in 2021 before they travel at all. And then short distance ahead is Thanksgiving, and you can see where the proportion of Americans who plan to travel over Thanksgiving has decreased since mid-August. Now less than 14% of travelers have plans to travel over the holiday. And as we look forward over the next several years, Destination Analyst has added this question just to ask about, once we've moved past this, what do the next 2 years look like for you? What are your future travel priorities? You can see that we do expect them to change somewhat. A third of travelers expect to travel more domestically, and nearly as many say they will travel more with family in the next 2 years. Visiting national parks and bucket list destinations also rated high. Okay, now let's move on to some impact numbers, the impact of the pandemic in terms of visitor spending, occupancy tax collections, and lodging indicators. So this data is from tourism economics, and while travel spending has continued to slowly inch back up past its worst from the spring, weekly spending is still less than it was pre-pandemic. So you could see back in February we were at 501 million a week, and we're still not nearly there yet in October. In terms of percent change from 2019, you can see that we've somewhat leveled off in terms of weekly travel spending change, but it's still substantially lower than 2019. The most recent week for which we have data is actually, it says 10/3, but there's one bar past that. So it's the week ending October 10th. It was down 34% from the same week last year. And then, sorry. I hit the wrong thing. And then you can see this is the same data but presented monthly. So sometimes it's it kind of smooths it out to look at it monthly. So you can see September spending was down 35% from last September, and then we should have the full month of October by about mid-November. So we'll have that to share with you. The U.S. Travel Association has estimated that tourism losses in North Carolina as a result of the pandemic are $9.1 billion as of October 24th. That's a loss of 50% from the same time last year. Along with these tourism spending losses come losses in tax revenues, decreases of more than $1.1 billion. Tourism job losses are expected to be 31% or more by the end of the year. Now let's look at some other data that we're trying to get a better handle on or be able to present to you. A couple years ago, Whit and I asked that you begin sending us your occupancy tax collections directly to us. The Department of Revenue does collect that data, but it takes almost a year after the end of the fiscal year for them to release that data. So we really we're trying very hard to get that data much sooner by asking you, our partners, to send your tax information or tax collection information directly to us. We have about 37 counties and or municipalities who are participating right now in this tax collection, sending them directly to me, and I'm putting them in a database. And so this graph only represents the 37 who I have complete data for the last 3 years of January through June. So there may be a few destinations who have sent historical data but haven't updated the data with me. So this only represents 37, and I'm going to show you in a minute how that spreads out throughout the state. But just wanted to kind of show you what we do know in terms of occupancy tax collections. You can see that monthly percent change, and those are the round circles at the bottom, the monthly percent change in occupancy tax collections. 2019 was up for these 37 counties for the first half of the year. And even January of 2020 was up 11%, 11.4% over January 2019. But then, of course, as we moved into the pandemic, things bottomed out. The worst month being April, which showed collections down 76%. Again, this is not a complete analysis of occupancy tax collections, but only those for which we have data for. It's a good baseline, though. As we start to recover, we can see directly how you guys are doing in terms of your tax collections. We would ask that you participate. Right now, this map represents either the North Carolina occupancy tax collections are different than other states because you can have a county tax, a city tax, or both. But this represents the counties and or municipalities who have participated thus far. And so this is who I have data for the last 3 years that I just showed you in the graph. The dark blue is I have complete data, either the whole county, or maybe it's just a county tax, or just a municipality in that county, or both. The green, I have county data, and I may have some municipal data, but I don't have all the municipal data if they have separate legislation for municipalities. And then the red, I have at least one municipality data, but not the county and or other municipality data. So you can see the red and the green are somewhat incomplete. The blues, I have their complete tax data. So if you want to participate, we would welcome all of our destinations and partners to participate in this. All you have to do is send me your data. I don't release any individual data. It's all aggregated just so we can see what's going on in our communities. We want to know how your tax collections are going because we do have lodging data and other data, but this really helps us know in total how business is going. And it's really quick. If you send me your monthly data, I have some counties that just have me on their email list, and I get it, the first week of the following month. So if you want more information about how to participate, and if you have questions, give me a call, give Whit a call, or drop us an email. But we'd love to have more of you participate in this project. So now let me just give you a little bit of a lodging analysis. And again, we get this data from 3 different sources. We use STR for our commercial data. We use AirDNA for our shared economy, and we use key data for our vacation rentals, the traditional rentals. So we do know, we have heard from many of you that some areas of the state have seen positive numbers, particularly with these home rentals. And this table shows just that. Room nights sold, or demand, as I usually call it, for shared economy entire home rentals. We figure that's the best representation of what is comparable to a hotel room. But that is up nearly 19%. This is year to date through September. I don't have October data in full yet. So, and then vacation rentals up 7.2% year to date. Keep in mind though, that these types of accommodations represent a much smaller piece of that accommodation pie, if you will. So while it's very positive to see good news, we got to remember that the lion's share of revenues in terms of lodging in North Carolina as a state, maybe not locally, but as a state, those commercial hotels and motels do bring in the lion's share, more than 85% of revenue statewide. So while these positives are positive, we need to, focus on the total, if you will. So now I'm going to transition again and give you some of the most recent results from our resident sentiment. The full report is not available yet, but we have received some top line results from our wave 2 of our work with MNGY Global. If you'll recall, we're doing a random sample of 1,200 North Carolina residents, and then it's balanced to the population of the state. And we really designed this to track that resident sentiment towards tourism in the wake of COVID-19, because we know that for many of you and for the state as a whole, that our North Carolina residents are going to be a very important market for us as we move towards recovery. So I presented earlier back in the summer our wave 1, our initial baseline study, and this represents our second wave, where we went back and asked them additional questions and then some of the same questions so we could track change. So as a result of your COVID experience, please indicate how likely you are to do the following. So this is a change from wave 1 to wave 2. As we have moved through the pandemic, North Carolinians are taking more precautions than they said they were in late May when we fielded the first wave of the study. They're also more likely than they were in May to choose accommodations where they feel safe, as we saw in those lodging slides earlier. We've heard that that travelers are interested in choosing accommodations. You can see here where they prepare their own meals, where they could check in without any interaction, where they could social distance. So we are seeing that. The proportion of North Carolina residents more interested in in-state travel has also grown from early in the pandemic. During wave 1, 29% expressed more interest, and in wave 2, 38% said they were more interested in vacationing in North Carolina. Surprisingly, even as the pandemic continues to affect our state and our country, North Carolina residents' affinity towards travelers, both in their state and their local communities, have grown. And certainly seasonality, there's some bit of seasonality here in place, and I would be remiss to not note that, but you'll note that the changes from late spring to early fall, that a smaller proportion of residents say that they will visit a restaurant in the next 3 months, while a higher proportion reported likelihood in visiting a North Carolina city or metro area and staying in a home rental. So again, I think there's some seasonality here, perhaps with maybe state park visits or maybe golf, depending on the weather. I think there's some seasonality that we would want to understand, but I do think that there are some positives here to take from this. The majority of North Carolina residents indicate that they don't have any change in their interest in traveling in-state as a result of COVID-19. Piedmont, when we looked at it by geography, Piedmont residents are slightly more likely to have increased interest in in-state travel than the residents of mountains or coast. And again, who do North Carolina residents trust when thinking about travel planning? The question is, when planning your travel, please rate how trustworthy you feel each of the following is for COVID-19 safety. And you can see that friends and family and local health departments as trustworthy sources of health information when planning travel rated highest. In terms of those who consider official travel and tourism offices, both state and local, are pretty high as well. The older residents aged 55 and up, have more trust in state offices, the data shows, while the younger travelers ages 18 to 34 are more likely to place trust in the local tourism agency. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And finally, just more than a quarter of North Carolina residents say that they have taken an overnight trip within the state since March 1st. 21%, this is really interesting, have visited a new destination in North Carolina that they have never visited before. So I think that's really some great news there. 30% have plans for an overnight trip within the state before the end of the year. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Whit, but I think we'll have time for questions at the end. And again, all of this data will be available eventually when we get the full report, and we'll post it on our website. But if you all have any questions, after the fact, if you think of anything else you want to ask me, you can always email me and be happy to help you in any way I can.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Marlise. As Marlise said, we will have her available for questions at the end for anybody who has questions for that. And now we're going to talk about PR. So many of you know that Margo Metzger has joined on to our staff to help our PR program. So we welcome Margo here. And she's going to talk about something that we've done from our PR standpoint that I think is really interesting and been very beneficial to us. We also have Chelsey Kirby from JPR joining us, and Veda Gilbert from Discover Durham. Welcome, everybody. Margo.
Good morning. Thank you, Whit. I'm excited to be with you all and back on the VisitNC PR team as a consultant. And today we are going to share with you a how-to for partners on hosting a virtual media mission for your destination. Using VisitNC's recent virtual media mission as a case study, we're going to walk you through the process and offer tips and tools for planning and executing a successful alternative for journalists and influencers during COVID-19. So my fellow presenters, as Whit said, are Public Relations Vice President Chelsey Kirby and Discover Durham PR Manager Veda Gilbert. I also want to give a shout out to the rest of the JPR team and to Suzanne Brown for all their work behind the scenes to make this an outstanding mission that we're going to share with you today. So with that, I'm going to toss it to Chelsey.
Thank you, Margo. Hello, everyone. Nice to be back. I'm excited to share with you a look at the virtual media mission we completed last month and give you the tools you need on how to host your very own media mission from home. We're coining it a 7-step process, but these are what we consider the core 7 steps you need to create a successful media mission. Of course, there's lots of things you can do or you don't have to do from what we're about to present. But the name of the game is really just creating a compelling angle that you can share with media and then seeing that through to fruition. So the first step is really laying the groundwork, and within here we have steps 1 and 2. Before you start anything, you're going to want to decide, what is this all about? When you choose your topic, there's a few things you need to consider, and this sounds easy, but I promise it could actually be the most difficult part of the entire mission. Firstly, just trying to figure out where to narrow and hone in on, when you're thinking about what there is to talk about your destination, your county, your city, whatever it might be. There's so many different angles you can take. So when you're thinking about what's going to resonate the best right now, keep in mind these 3 topics. 1, what do you want the media participants to walk away with? 2, what's newsy and trending right now? And 3, how can you break through the clutter? When you think about this, when we thought about this for the virtual media mission we did for North Carolina just last month, we actually decided the topic 3 months in advance, but really it was a year or so in advance that we decided that what we wanted to focus on this year was highlighting female entrepreneurs across the state. We felt like there was a story there. It resonates with media right now, trying to showcase female voices and how they're, bringing something to the table within the travel and lifestyle space specifically. And so this was always an angle we wanted to take. And then when we decided that the virtual media mission was the route we were going to take, we thought, who would be better than to be our state representatives than these female entrepreneurs across the travel, tourism, and lifestyle space. When it came to time to actually choosing the sorry, if you could go back one. When it came time to actually choose the panelists, some things to keep in mind. Have your panelists spoken with media before? Will they require additional media training? Do they have something compelling and unique to share? There might be somebody great, but they've never spoken with media before, and then they might shy and tense up when it comes time to be on camera. And if you don't have the luxury of time on your hands, you might want to, wait to highlight that partner and then move on to the one who is media ready, even if the story doesn't quite, weigh as high as you would like. For step 2, securing major players and dates, you'll want to confirm at least 2 to 3 panelists. We recommend no more than 5 because there can be a lot of voices and we only have a limited of time with our media friends. Confirming a moderator is as important as the panelists. We had the pleasure of having Margo jump right in as moderator, and because she knows the state so well, she was able to really act as though I think she did know so much about it with very little research, and it felt very familiar and comfortable. When you're also considering these major players and dates, just try to arrange a video intro meeting for all people ahead of time, because that allows for a sense of camaraderie and familiarity between your panelists and your moderator, and it will allow for a much warmer environment when the time comes to be on camera. So on the next slide, step 3 is the introductions. And here you'll do a video intro meeting, not to be confused with a test run, but this is really just to get to know people. You know, in the times of non-COVID, we would have a coffee date or a meeting at the VNC office. This time around, we did a video meeting and kept it to 30 minutes, let everybody share their stories, and allowed people to know who else is presenting and what they're presenting to help shape their messages as needed. During that video intro meeting, you'll want to decide 2 to 4 core subtopics that everybody agrees on, so everybody feels comfortable when it comes time to chat, and discuss a timeline. And we have a timeline on the other side of this page. You're welcome to go through that at your leisure. This is a sample of what we did last month, and you'll note that it's an hour. I won't go through it in detail right this moment, but we did have a framework of how we wanted to see that virtual media mission live, and I'm happy to say we were actually able to stick to it, believe it or not. I'd also suggest that during this video intro meeting, if you want to send a media gift mailer, this is something to chat about on that meeting. This is a nice to, not a need to. But we've found that with virtual media missions, sending something in advance is almost like a guarantor of attendance the day of. You have attendees who feel much more invested, and they get to feel and touch and smell and taste what you'll be talking about on the call, and it just makes everything that much more 4D, if we can use that term today. On the next slide, steps 4 and 5, you want to practice and engage. And step 4 is testing, arrange a practice webinar. It doesn't have to be a whole hour, but even just 20 minutes, just to make sure all of your attendees can use Zoom or WebEx, whatever platform you're using, and that everybody feels comfortable for the day of, so that 15 minutes before the call the day of, you're not scrambling to figure out why somebody's audio isn't working. And then along with this, step 4, step 5 would be sending media invites. So you want to create your targeted media invite list. Who are you going after? Who do you want to attend? Who will be interested in your message? Craft an invitation that speaks to that list, and look to excite and encourage attendees. And then also get your gift mailer out if you are sending one of those. And I think that, with using last month's virtual media mission as a case study, we received more than 10 attendees responding within 2 days of sending out our invite. It was very clear who was interested, who wasn't interested. And what set us apart was that, there are lots of destination boards who are doing get to know X state, I don't want to say trendy, but this is something to do right now to engage with media. So we took a slightly different approach. Rather than get to know the state, we said get to know the state through these personal stories. And we collected the 5 speakers who had really diverse and exciting and interesting and compelling stories to tell across the state that brought to fruition the overarching thread that North Carolina is a place that invites and supports female entrepreneurs and creates a very different travel experience than one would ordinarily find.
Okay, I'll pick it up from here. Thank you, Chelsey. So for Step 6, on the day before, you are just doing a lot of correspondence and sending the panelists a list of media who have registered to attend. You're, of course, sending all the attendees a reminder, making sure no one is confused about which link to click, etc. Finalizing the presentation, and we recommend saving it as a PDF to your desktop so that it's really easy for screen sharing. And if you're the moderator, like I was, I think it's really important to write your script so you don't mess up the introductions. In our case, we had 5 panelists, and it was a lot to keep up with the names and destinations, and also just a great way to organize your thoughts. I took my job as moderator very seriously. I did. I was so excited, though, to learn the stories of these fascinating women. So it was quite a pleasure to do the research. But I felt like I knew all of them, even though I had not met very many of them in person. And then on the day of, you want to ensure that all your panelists and moderator dial in early, just to do a final tech check. And be sure to hit record as soon as you start, because it's a great thing to be able to share after the fact, not only with the media who attend, but you never know when you might need it for posterity or educational purposes like we have today. Okay, next slide, Whit. And then for your finishing touches, once you have wrapped up your virtual media mission, you want to share that information for content uses on all kinds of channels. Those could be sound bites, they could be images of the partners and their destinations, any quotable moments, just really picking out some of those highlights to share on social. And of course, following up as you would with a regular media mission, sending that thank you note, sending that follow-up to your participants, both the panelists and the media attendees, and making sure you share the recording with everyone. So next, we're gonna get the perspective of one of our partner participants. Whit, if you wanna go ahead to the next slide. So when Visit North Carolina came up with this concept, you know, with a virtual media mission, you really have to narrow down the number of participants. And I'm happy to report that this went so well. We hope to do more of these to enable more partners to be part of it. But in the planning process, VisitNC and JPR were looking for those stories that were going to entice media to tell a story now that would influence travel a little later. And so Durham is a great example of a great pitch that we received. And just throughout the whole process, we felt like Durham was a great example. So Veda Gilbert is with us to talk about her perspective. Veda, can you tell us a little bit about how you developed your pitch, knowing this would be a virtual mission?
Sure. So usually Durham sells itself when you get a journalist here, but in a virtual setting, it's obviously different. It makes the storytelling aspect so important because they can't see, hear, or touch their destination, only listen. And so with that in mind, we chose a partner that was relevant and had an impactful story, but it was also a really strong Durham advocate.
And tell us a little bit more about the partner that you selected, Tiffany Griffin.
So big thing for us is just know your partners. I have the pleasure of knowing Tiffany from, I mean, I remember sitting in the Durham Hotel discussing Bright Black when it was just an idea and how she was going to market it and the story behind it. And so, you know, we stayed in regular contact. And so I knew her story, but she also knew our mission. So, you know, she was an easy pick for us because, you know, we know that people and the stories behind the people are very compelling, and Tiffany just represents so much of Durham's personality and character. So for us, she was just such a wonderful choice, and thankfully she was just as eager and excited to represent Durham and speak for this virtual media mission.
Yeah, she really was fantastic.
Thank you.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with Bright Black, it is a company that makes candles based on a sense of place. So even though she's not a typical tourism partner, her product very much relates back to the place of Durham. Can you tell us about her candle and the series of candles that she's made, just to help people understand why this pitch was so compelling?
Yeah, so her first batch, for want of a better word, of candles was the 5 candles that each represent a place in the world that is has a strong Black influence. And so I think the Durham candle, now you're really putting me on the spot here because I don't have my cheat sheet there. So this is a lesson. It incorporates so much of the Durham history. She has one on Paris. So there's 5 in total. And I think I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but it's the Dear Sephora range. And Tiffany just grew her whole company around this feeling of sense and place of these, 5 places that she chose that had such a strong Black history.
Yes, I remember that well. And I believe the candle from Durham, if I'm not mistaken, had the fragrances of cotton,
Correct,
and tobacco and whiskey.
Yeah.
And so there was just so much storytelling in that candle that gave her kind of this lead in to really say more about the place where she's from. So that was really wonderful. And how did you go on to further leverage the opportunity after the mission had wrapped up?
So for us, it was as if JPR broke the seal. So, our confidence obviously grew from this. And then, when we had media reach out, we had the confidence to follow up straight away. I think we've been a little hesitant about pitching national media since the pandemic. We sort of tiptoed around it, and it's that thing where, when do you start inviting journalists back? And I don't think it had really dawned on us now that, you can have these conversations about things that are happening now that might make for great future conversation, but are also relevant in the moment. And so, not only are we now leveraging the immediate connections that JPR made for us, but we're now looking at tailored pitching going forward.
That's great. It is certainly a challenging time to tell a travel story, and we have to get creative, but also understanding that travel writers are kind of in the same boat, and they need content. And the more we can continue to share our stories of North Carolina, the more we can continue to capture that share of mind for people who are dreaming of getting back to traveling. Okay, can you go to the next slide, Whit? So tell us, Veda, about media that you earned as a result of this event.
So we were really fortunate that within 2 days of the media mission, and I'm just going to plug you, Chelsey and Margo, you both did an exceptional job on the day, so thank you for making it also seamless. But Sandra Romano followed up and with a very timely piece that was going to print the next day type thing, and she had a couple of hours. And she reached out and said, I need some information. And once again, it goes back to knowing your partner. So I got on the phone and I rang Tiffany and I said, are you in front of your computer? And Tiffany's like, no, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, go to your computer. And then Tiffany rang me back and she was like, okay, are you okay if I answer? And this is what I'm going to send. And I was just like, do it. And she sent it. She CC'd me. And it was just once again, when Sandra then came back with follow-up questions, I text Tiffany and Tiffany's like, I'm just picking up my daughter, but I'll action this in 30 minutes. So for me, it was real a partner working with me and me working with a partner. And then once again from that, because we were so quick to respond, not only were we included in this massive media hit with the Rob Report, but Sandra's going to include us in another piece this month, because it's now November. So that was very exciting. And then we've also had a couple of partners reach out with just follow-up questions, which has been nice.
Very good.
Sorry, journalists.
And just from your perspective as a partner, any other feedback or insights you would want to share with your fellow CVBs and DMOs around the state?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely follow up, pretty much what you said before with the bow. Speaking as a former journalist, journalists are really busy. If you can make it as easy and seamless for them as possible, give them the information they need, a little bit more and some images, and that's usually enough for them to get over the finish line. The other thing I wrote, relevant information. Just try to avoid the back and forth if possible, just eliminate as little time as possible. Know your technology. Tiffany and I were talking before the event and I was on mute and she said she was on mute, but then I looked at my screen and she didn't look like she was on mute. And we were speaking candidly. I mean, of course, it was nothing that we would want censored, but still, it unnerved me because I had that moment where I was just like, what were we talking about? And it was probably how much wine we were going to consume that evening, or I don't know, but it was still that moment that it was just like, we shouldn't, do you know what I mean? So just know your technology. And I guess finally, I would say, grow and nurture this relationship. So anytime a journalist reaches out to you, or, after the event when Chelsey shared who the journalists were that had attended, keep the relationship, keep the conversation going. If they do write an article that your partner is included, follow up, with a thank you. Is there anything else that they're working on that a partner might be another good fit for? Send them your latest pitch sheet. I sent the follow-up response with the entrepreneur pitch sheet that we'd created for this media mission, just to keep that conversation. And, just make sure that we're front of mind if they have any other female entrepreneur articles coming up.
Great. So after going through this and participating, I know you said it sort of broke the seal for you to feel comfortable pitching again. Do you think you might do your own virtual media mission?
We like to start off small. I definitely like the idea of doing a one-on-one coffee date, with somebody that I might have met with at a media mission prior that I haven't got to work with. When COVID hit, I was actually in Charleston representing, Durham for Visit North Carolina with Chelsey. And we ideated stories that never really came to anything. So maybe, I send them out an invite saying, let's have a coffee. And maybe I send them some coffee from one of our local coffee suppliers, and that's what we drink while we chat type thing. But it's definitely like Chelsey, and you were saying, tailoring what we want to talk about, not having 20 partners, but just having a few and sort of the one idea that we hone in on.
I love that idea of sending a little taste of Durham to a journalist far away. I mean, it really does help make the connection.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay, thank you so much, Veda. That was really helpful.
Thank you for having me.
Great to hear your perspective. Okay, so if you haven't had a chance to watch the virtual media mission and you want to, it is linked there with a very easy link to remember, or I'm sure you can see this when Whit shares the presentation later. There's my email address and Suzanne's as well. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We would be more than glad to help you do your own, and we're happy to take questions as part of the Q&A. Thank you.
Speaking of mute, I was on mute, but all right, thanks so much. I really think this is huge, for us. We've got to not just, it's not about getting visitors or journalists in our towns right now, but we need to be set up to be able to continue that storyline going and get back as soon as we can once this happens. So this is a perfect way to continue that moving along and get to where we need to be. So thanks for that. We'll bring Marliese back in here as well, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So we only have a couple of questions. Remember, you can ask questions on the right-hand side. But first question is about the media mission. Was it recorded? And if so, can we get a copy of the actual mission that was done?
Yes, you can. And right there on your screen, if you go to bit.ly/VNC Media Mission, you can access the recording and see exactly how we did it. And you can send your critiques also of what we could have done better. But yeah, and I'll also add that when we did the pre-Zoom call with the partners, we recorded that as well, which turned out to be incredibly helpful to me as the moderator to go back in and just watch the style and the comfort level of the folks who were going to be on the final webinar, media mission. And it helped me know who I might need to draw out a little bit more, and also who might be prone to talking a lot, so that I could keep it balanced throughout. So I say always record. Just tell the people you're recording them.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's a real benefit to recording things, just to have them around in this virtual environment that we're in. And I think most of the time, we think, oh, people are going to be really worried they're getting recorded. But I think so many of us are getting recorded so much now, we've really gotten used to it. So next question is, can VisitNC and JPR help destinations develop their media lists, sort of similar to help them getting into doing these media missions?
I can jump in there. I think that if you look at the co-op program, there are some specialty programs and media opportunities for projects where you can, through VNC, contract JPR. So that's always an option for you. And if you're interested in starting that conversation, I think that Margo is probably the right person to go through, and we can talk more about that.
Great. Okay, then can we get a copy of the 7-step process you just presented? It's actually, you can get it off this webinar. We'll have the webinar at partners.visitnc.com. And I don't know if Margo, if we have a document or.
We do. Yeah, I can share that as well. Mm-hmm.
Great. So just let us know. I think you can see Margo's email address there. Just shoot Margo an email, mm-hmm. and she can send you that document. This is an interesting question. Can you please share the time allocated between the steps?
Between the steps.
Between the different steps.
Oh,
so how much time did you allocate for each step, sort
of? What was the total timeline, Chelsey?
About 3 months. Yeah. No, I mean, I could go back and look at the hours, but I'd say that overall, it's so dependent on, really, from that very first step, how long does it take you to concept what you're going to be talking about? You could end up having 3 meetings about creative brainstorming and selecting your partners, or it could be as simple as you sit down with a piece of paper and you highlight the 3 people that you want to focus on, and you make that decision. You have those relationships that Veda mentioned having, and you are able to bang that out within 20 minutes. So it's so individual, so personal. I think that, it is a big project. I don't want to minimize that. And I think that the more practice you do, it's very important to do those practices, the intro meeting, the test run, the actual webinar itself, which was an hour. Between those 3 practices, that's at least a chunk of 3 to 5 hours that you'll need. So I would prepare as though you're going to do a true media mission, and know that all of that work that goes into a true in-person media mission still ends up happening. It's just you're in front of your computer, you're not traveling or having coffee or enjoying getting to meet people in person.
Super. Okay, here's a question from Marlies on the research. Marlies, do you think current media coverage of the 3rd wave is going to negatively impact people's desire to travel?
Yes, I do. I think we've seen that in the last couple of weeks. I think we've seen the excitement go down. I don't know, if we've seen travel plans being canceled yet, but I think those who didn't have plans, maybe just tentatively in their head had things planned, I think they've pulled back on the reins. But yes, I do. I do think as we move forward, into the cold weather and we see some numbers spike, that we're going to see less excitement. I think we'll still see interest in learning about destinations, but in terms of traveling now or in the very near future, I do think that that's going to have a big effect on it.
Yeah, it is remarkable to me, you know, as we've watched the numbers go through and go up and down, but how people are following the media conversation on this, and as the media says it's worse, people, you know, immediately clam up, and when the media starts to say, well, it's not so bad or it's getting better, we see people really change their interest and desire in traveling. So that'll be really important as we go forward too. And it's one of the reasons why we've tried to keep an emphasis on safe travel, so as to not have any of those outbreaks that would get us any headlines in the media and would prevent people from wanting to come here. Okay.
Wait, can I jump in with a comment really quick?
Yes, certainly.
At the beginning of the virtual media mission, I spent probably a minute making sure that all the media on the call understood that North Carolina takes safe travel very seriously, and told them about the Count on Me and See effort for hospitality businesses of all kinds to participate and, you know, make sure that we're hosting people safely when they do come.
That's outstanding. And I think it's important to know, you know, we do have an inspiration campaign we're ready to run with when the time is right. But the key for us is not running it until the time is right, and saving that ammunition for when people are ready to travel. Obviously, we hope that'll be soon, but we're not the ones who will decide that. It's really society, up to society to decide that. A couple other quick questions. I mentioned earlier a webinar for next week. That's going to be Tuesday next week, because Wednesday is Veterans Day. So many businesses will be closed. And it is just a webinar for those people who have gotten the grants, the NCTIA 1.5 million tourism marketing grants. We're going to go over some of the reporting requirements behind them. So if you're not getting a grant, don't worry about it. Take the week off, relax, have some fun, travel, that kind of stuff. And then we've had some other questions about the other videos that Margo was talking about, if they'll share them. We're not going to post those. Those were things we would typically post, but you can email Margo and ask her for links or ways to get through any of that stuff. All right. Thanks so much, Chelsey. Thanks, Veda. Thanks, Marlies and Margo, forever and always, for helping us out. And we hope everybody has a good week, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much.